Hello, everyone. I've got a really crazy story for you today. Unfortunately, there will be little to no visual representations for the story due to its graphic nature. I will also be turning quotes from rated R to PG. Hopefully, that will be enough for YouTube to allow its monetization. There will be a news clip or two at the end, but that's about it. I hope you're okay with that and understand why I'm doing it. Now, with that being said, let's jump right into it. I opened up a little pit beef stand. I had real roast beef and pork sandwiches, and why not? They were very good. The human body tastes similar to pork. If you mix it together, no one can tell the difference. Everything was going good until I ran out of my special meat. So I lured another girl up to my trailer. I got her in there and started ripping her clothes off and knocking her the hell around. She was screaming, but there was no one around to hear her, except me, and I just kept laughing at her. I turned around for a split second, and that was my mistake. She ran out the door before I could get to her. There was a chain-link fence with barbed wire on top of it, but around the front of the company, there was a stack of pallets about 10 foot high. That girl scaled those pallets like a monkey and jumped and ran down to the main road where some guy in a pickup truck picked her up and took her to a nearby gas station, and they called the cops. Well, I knew the cops were on the way, but I didn't run. I gathered up her clothing, grabbed the keys to the gate, and then went out and opened it. As soon as I stepped out the gate, a cop car pulled up and the cop jumped out and pulled his gun on me and told me to get on the ground, and that is where it all came to an end. They took me down and booked me. She told them I said I was going to kill her like the rest, which was true. They had me sitting in a little room down at homicide drilling me, and damn near kissing my ass trying to find out what I had done. They pulled me out of city jail every day for 1 month, taking me back and forth between the company and the bridge. I had them going crazy over at the company digging up the remains of those 2 girls there because I had their remains buried in 7 different holes. The only thing I feel bad about in any of this is I didn't get to murder the 2 people I was really after, and that's my ex-old lady and the dude she hooked up with. Well, that's my story. Horrible, but true. So, the next time you're riding down the road and you happen to see an open pit beef stand that you've never seen before, make sure you think about this story before you take a bite of that sandwich. Sometimes you never know who you may be eating. Those are Joe Methany's words from an unverified jailhouse confession. I say unverified because there is no record of the girl that got away going to the cops, his arrest at that point, or that he ever even opened and owned a pit beef stand. Most true crime channels go with his confession as fact at face value, but truthfully, I'm not so sure. I say that because what can be verified, and is documented, is a world of depravity protected by organized crime. What we do know is, Joe was born on March 2, 1954. His childhood was steeped in neglect, and some of it was spent in West Virginia, but was mostly in Baltimore. His mother, Joe Methany, was forced to work multiple jobs as a barmaid, waitress, and food truck driver to provide for her 6 children, while his father struggled with alcoholism and was prone to violent outbursts and fits of rage. As a result, both parents were largely absent from his life, and by the age of 6, his father had been killed in a car accident. Metheny himself said that he frequently went hungry and was put into homes all throughout his childhood. His mother strongly denied these claims, stating her children never went hungry or were ever put into homes, and they had a rather normal childhood. She even said Metheny was polite and smart in school. Other accounts recall him being disruptive and aggressive throughout his education, and that he struggled with authority and being told what to do. At some point, his family moved to Essex, Maryland, a suburb in Baltimore County. Beyond that, little is known about Metheny's early years, though it has been claimed he was involved in petty crime as a teenager, such as burglary and vandalism, and that he exhibited violence at a young age. In 1973, he joined the Army. He said he served in Vietnam, but there's no proof of that either. It seems as though he only spent time in Germany during his time in the service. It seems like the only thing the military got him was addicted to crack cocaine and heroin, although it was reported in the Baltimore Sun newspaper that he studied physics during his time in the Army. Following his discharge, Metheny became homeless and would sleep under the Hanover Street Bridge in Baltimore City in a homeless encampment known as Tent City. At that time, he was ironically known as Tiny, despite being 6'1" and obese. However, he would gain the extreme weight he is known for while in prison. Referred to as polite and doing well by his employers and friends, he was actually spending every cent he would make on illicit drugs and alcohol. It was at that period in time he'd take his first steps down the path of depravity and murder that would eventually come to define his life. In 1994, Metheny was living in a trailer with his girlfriend, who was also a drug addict, and their 6-year-old son. His work as a truck driver meant he was often away for long periods of time, and after one such journey, he returned home to find the trailer empty. His girlfriend left and took their son with her. According to Metheny's confession, he said, "It all started back in July of 1994. I was at work. I was a truck driver. I was working overtime this one night, then I got off and went home as I always did. But when I opened the door and turned on the light, I noticed there was nothing there. My old lady had taken everything, including my son, and left me. Her leaving was not my problem, but she took my 6-year-old son with her. She was a crack addict and a worthless POS. I would have paid her to get out of my life. All she had to do was take my son over to my mother's house, and she could have had everything else and just be gone. Around 6 months later, he discovered his girlfriend had left him for another man, living on the streets and selling her body to support her drug addiction. As a result, social services had removed their 6-year-old son from her custody. Metheney, who already had a criminal record, thought he had no chance getting him back if he went to the authorities, so he set his sights on another goal: revenge. He made it his sole intention to find out where his ex and her new partner were, and to unleash all of his anger and hatred on them. Scouring drug hotspots and halfway houses, he was informed that they'd been seen under a bridge, getting high with some other homeless people. He didn't find his girlfriend under that bridge, but he did encounter Brewer and Piker, 2 homeless men sleeping on a mattress. He suspected they knew where she was. When they denied this, he became enraged and brutally murdered them with an axe he brought along with him. He left their chopped-up bodies on the mattress, and later that same evening he encountered a sex worker near the same bridge, who he got high with, and tried to pry information from her about the whereabouts of his ex-girlfriend. Again, he refused to accept she didn't know anything. And again his rage took over. He would essay her before murdering her too, leaving her body behind a bush. The next sex worker he encountered met the same fate, after failing to give him any information about his ex-girlfriend. When he threw her into the bushes, he spotted a black man fishing that saw what he did. So he grabbed a nearby metal pipe and attacked the fisherman with it, splitting his skull and killing him for simply being a witness. Having murdered 5 people in about 7 hours, he took the bodies of the women and the fishermen, weighed their bodies down with rocks, and dumped them in the water, while leaving the bodies of Brewer and Piker chopped up on the mattress. Then he washed himself off in the river, cleaned himself off as best he could, and fled the scene. At least, that's the version of events he claimed happened that night. Whether any of it was true and whether the 2 girls and fishermen even existed has never been proven. What is known is the axe used to murder Brewer and Piker was stolen from the scene by another homeless man, Larry Amos, who was ultimately arrested and convicted for using it to kill Everett Dowell. He served a year and 9 months after pleading guilty to manslaughter for that killing. Metheny himself was arrested for the murder of Brewer and Piker after their bodies were discovered. He spent 18 months in Baltimore City Jail waiting to go to trial in 1995. However, without much evidence, detectives were unable to build a sufficient case against him, and he would end up being acquitted on all charges and was released without a trial ever even taking place. He would later admit to committing both of those murders he was originally arrested for. According to Metheny's confession, he said, "I was free again. I went back and talked to my old boss and talked him into giving my job at the pallet company back to me. There was a little trailer on the property, so I told my boss to let me stay there and I could keep an eye on the place. He agreed to this and gave me the keys to the front gate, the main building, and the trailer. The company was on a dead-end road and was very isolated. It was perfect for what I wanted to do." Once free, Metheney resumed his search for his ex-girlfriend and their child, but something had changed in him. While it could be argued his earlier murders were acts of anger and passion, his new crimes took on a dark and twisted nature. The Joe Stein pallet company he lived and worked at was a gated-in area, about the size of one city block, with a warehouse and office surrounded by thousands of wooden pallets, and was adjacent to a wooded area. There were no employees there during the night, and very little pedestrian traffic at any given time. It was literally a place no one would hear you scream. This is the period in time most true crime videos and podcasts seem to skip or miss completely, which is a massive disservice to the viewer and/or listener. In the middle of November of 1996, Metheny killed 23-year-old Kimberly Lynn Spicer by stabbing her repeatedly with a knife, and on December 8, 1996, Metheny would kidnap and attempt to SA his friend Rita Kemper. They had befriended each other sharing cocaine one night. According to prosecutors, they were in Metheny's trailer together when he tried to have sex with her. She ran out of the trailer, and he chased her and said, "I'm going to kill you and bury you with the other girls." Kemper escaped and hopped a chain-link fence, ran down the road, flagged a truck down, and got help. Kemper said, "Whatever Tiny wanted to do that night, he was going to do. He said I could scream as loud as I wanted to. I knew he wasn't going to let me out of there alive, but I wasn't going to let this man take my life from me without a fight." When the police arrested him in 1996, it was expected that he would put up a fight. Instead, he provided a very detailed confession, preceded by saying, "I am a very sick person." He continued, "To start off, I'll tell you about myself at the present moment, which is locked up. I'm 48 years old, I weigh about 450 pounds, and it's not all fat. I've been locked up for almost 8 years now, but when one has been sentenced to a couple of life without parole sentences, time doesn't matter anymore. I have no problem being locked up, no one put me here but myself, and I deserve to be right where I'm at because I had 12 law-abiding jurors tell me so in a couple different cases. I was only convicted for the 2 murders and the kidnapping of the one that got away. I got 50 years for her. The first murder, I was sentenced to life without parole. The second one, they gave me the death penalty. I sat on Maryland's death row for 3 years and then they overturned my sentence and gave me another life without parole sentence, then sent me down here for the rest of my life. I killed 7 people, 3 men and 4 women. 2 men I chopped up with an axe under a bridge in South Baltimore. I was found not guilty for them because they couldn't prove I did it. Under that same bridge, I killed 2 women and 1 man who was fishing and just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. I weighed their bodies down and put them in that river. I showed the police where I put them 3 years later, but they couldn't find them, so they could not charge me for them. My murder rampage started out as revenge, but ended as a passion for the taste of blood and the overwhelming sense of power one gets from taking the life of another. The rest is the second half of the confession you heard in the beginning of the video, and in all truth, the second half of this confession is exactly why this case got national notoriety and somewhat popular among true crime YouTube channels and podcasts. The cannibalism is sensationalized because he apparently opened this so-called pit beef stand and was serving people human meat burgers. However, none of that can actually be confirmed or proven to be true, as stated earlier. When it comes to the pallet company though, all that information is there and documented. That's where the organized crime comes in. It's a huge portion of the case and it's why he was able to operate, and if it wasn't for certain events taking place behind the scenes, with this organized crime he was involved in, Joe Methany may have never been caught. Many accounts, including Metheney's confession, which we've already reviewed in full, state that upon Kemper flagging down help, he was arrested. However, local news recounted something different, numerous times, alleging that Metheney asked a friend and co-worker, named Clinton Ashbrook, to help him bury the body of Spicer, which he had been hiding at his work Joseph Stein & Son Pallet Company, since a month before asking. Clinton reportedly notified an FBI agent named James Fitzsimmons on December 15, 1996, and Metheney was charged with her murder the same day. The Baltimore Sun also reported that the owner of the business, 61-year-old Joseph Stein Sr., was arrested as an accessory after the fact for allegedly disposing of evidence. Stein and Metheney were both arrested after attending a Christmas party at Martin's East in Baltimore County, which is a ballroom and event center. The reason this was all reported to an FBI agent is because they were currently running a federal sting on Joseph Stein & Son, which was much more than just a pallet company. That was just a cover for a huge organized crime operation, where they were bribing insiders at companies like Solo, the plastic cup company, to cook their own books, delivered goods to them, and they were shortchanged pallets, and insiders would never write off the loss, so their headquarters never knew. And it went on for years, absolutely unknown. Joseph Stein Sr., known by many as Reds or Jack Stein, was a career criminal, and he and his son were robbing pharmacies and liquor stores. They were second-story men. In his early years, Joe Stein Jr. says he recalls his dad teaching him how to be a cat burglar and things like that, and would even drug him with barbiturates to calm his nerves and then put him through windows, allegedly. His father basically taught him to steal anything they could make a buck on, and he was in and out of prison. Joe Jr. would go to prison a couple times too, and he finally just had enough of it. After his last stint in prison, he started working for his father's pallet company. At first, his father talked like he was turning his life around and was running an honest business. But as he worked with his father more and more, he realized it was just another one of his schemes, on a much larger scale. This was happening with the Ashbrooks, which the Steins often married into. Joe Jr. eventually got to a point where he wanted to repent for everything he had done, and just wanted to get away from it all. So he went to the FBI, and became an undercover informant. At first, the FBI was taking it very slowly on this, because they wanted to bust as many people as possible. However, Joe Methany is the reason they started moving faster on the case. Not only was Metheney the forklift operator, but he was also the night watchman and subsequently Jack's enforcer. He did a lot of things for Jack, aka Joe Sr. So the sting came to an abrupt halt when the information about Metheney being a serial killer made its way back to the FBI from Clinton telling Jr. what he was doing. Jr. convinced Clinton to rat on Metheney, yet Clinton still served time. Basically, everyone ended up doing time besides Joe Jr. So if Jr. never came forward, Metheney may have never even been caught. There is still the Kemper story, but there is no documentation of her ever going to the police about it, and there is no record of him being arrested at his trailer after the Kemper situation. Kemper is never mentioned in the paper either. It's always the killing of Spicer. Joe Sr. was also charged with illegal possession of a firearm, on top of the accessory after the fact charge. So, at the end of all this, Joe Sr. also did a lot of time, ultimately for conspiracy to commit arson, because he would set fire to rival companies' vehicles. He was released from prison on an undisclosed date and died in his home in Baltimore in 2016. The FBI most likely wanted to take everyone down with a RICO on racketeering and tax evasion, but never really got the opportunity to because they had to swoop in very fast and get Joe Methany. This makes me wonder if Joe Methany may have never been caught if there was no sting or informant. And considering Joe Sr. was a pretty powerful criminal, Metheny may have simply decided it was easier to take the rap for the murders rather than throw him under the bus and possibly have to deal with him later in life. It's something to think about, at the very least. Now, all we are left with are Joe Methany's words and stories the way he wanted them to be told. He was found dead in his prison cell at the Western Correctional Institution in Maryland on August 5, 2017.
A convicted Baltimore serial killer has died this weekend. Joe Methany, the bald man in the video, was found dead in his cell. In this WJZ file video, Joe Methany shows police where he buried the bodies. The 62-year-old was serving 2 life sentences without parole for kidnapping, sexual assault, and 2 counts of murder.
This case has always interested me, but I had no idea what the whole story was until I decided to do this deep dive into Methany's murderous rampage. Hopefully, you found this video informative and learned something new, like I did. Thank you all for watching, and as usual, if you're a fan of urban legends, folklore, unsolved mysteries, cold cases, and all things mysterious, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel.